Hello, welcome to another video. Happy New Year, happy holidays. I hope you have some time off work and are relaxing and reading. I didn't do a November or a December video. I filmed a November one and the video was all messed up. It kept auto zooming and stuff, so I threw it out and then didn't refilm it. But I'm here now. Today I'm going to do 5 books that I loved in 2025. And then I'm going to talk about what's on my TBR for 2026. But before I do that, I've got Fat Tire from New Belgium Brewing that I'm going to crack open. This feels like a beer to drink out of the can. Fat Tire recrafted their recipe probably like 5 years ago at this point. It used to be an amber ale. I don't think they call it that anymore. It's sort of like tastes like a macro lager now. I'm kind of sad. Fat Tire was actually the first beer I ever bought when I turned 21. I was going to a community college. I remember getting out of class, stopping at a gas station on the way home, getting a 6-pack of Fat Tire, the old bottles with the bike on it and the red tops. Yeah, that was a good beer. This isn't that good. I love the can. It's very old school. I end up buying this like twice a year, hoping that I like it as much as I loved the old Fat Tire, and I never do, but that's all right. So I picked out 5 books. You can say my 5 favorite of 2025. I don't know if that's true. That's a really hard. There's books that are hard to pit against each other, but I'm going to start with It because I never talked about this and I said I would. I finished this last month. I'm going to be honest, I didn't love it as much as I wanted to love it. I went into it with extremely high expectations, and I think that's part of the reason why it didn't live up to my hype. I loved the setting. I loved Derry, the town of Derry. I loved the characters, the Losers Club. I liked the whole bullying aspect of it. I liked learning about like each character and their background. You're introduced to them as adults in the beginning, and then it flashes back to them as kids, and you get to learn about you get to experience their first interaction with it, whether that's Pennywise or any of the other forms he takes or it takes. I think the reason I struggled with this one is I've seen the movies, and I feel like when I know what's going to happen in a book, it doesn't hold my attention as easily. Obviously, I'm really happy I read it. I enjoyed my time. For the most part, there were a couple periods of the book where I was like, okay, let's wrap this up. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Just not, I wouldn't say it's in my top 3 Stephen King books, which I know I'm probably in the minority there, but I included that in my 5 books I loved in 2025, even though I didn't love it. But again, I said I would talk about it in the last 2 videos, so I wanted to put a bow on that. The next book I want to talk about, which I talked about before, one of my favorite books of all time. I read this in the spring, I think. Lonesome Dove, Larry McMurtry. Definitely one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's a Western, and I think part of the reason I loved it so much is I went into it with such little expectations. I read it as part of an online book club, and I don't read Westerns. I had heard about it. It was very hyped up, but I thought, okay, I'll read it just to get through it and to say I read it. And it turned out I didn't want it to end. I'm excited to read the 2 other books in the series. I think the next one's a prequel. But yeah, just the characters are so amazing. The sort of world building that Larry McMurtry does and the storylines he weaves together, just brilliant. I can't say anything that 100 other people haven't already said about this book. It's one of the best, and people talk about it for a reason. So I would say if you don't like Westerns, you probably do. Just read Lonesome Dove and you'll be converted. The third book I want to talk about is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is why I don't like picking favorites, because I could very easily consider this my favorite. I read this, I think in January or February, and I loved it when I read it. I couldn't put it down, and I walked away from it really, really loving it. But since then, it's kind of stuck with me, and I think about it still months and months after reading it. It just captures perfectly that like teenage struggle and angst and romance. And there's certain books that like I don't like using the word vibe, but I'll use it anyway. Like when I think about normal people, I like feel a feeling, almost like a memory from my real life. Like I feel like I experienced something reading Normal People. And part of that might be because I watched the show after reading it, which is also brilliant. But yeah, if you haven't read anything by Sally Rooney, this was my first Sally Rooney. I loved it. I went out afterwards and bought Intermezzo, and I'm going to be reading that in 2026. But yeah, Normal People, Sally Rooney. This next one, Disgrace by J.M. Coetzee. I think I talk about this one or mention it in like every video I film. If someone asked me on the street tomorrow what my favorite book is of all time, I would say Disgrace, which is crazy because, again, like how do you compare a book like this to Lonesome Dove or 11/22/63 or something like that? But quick recap, this is about a teacher in South Africa or a college professor who has a romantic interaction with a student that is uncovered by the school board and all that. So he's fired and he goes to stay with his sister in a different area of a war torn South Africa. The character of David Lurie is why this book is so good. And the way Coetzee introduces the character and the restraint I feel like he showed in what he revealed about David Lurie and what he didn't leaves the reader with like so many blanks to fill in, and it's hard to put together an accurate character judgment on the protagonist, and you don't know, at least I didn't know, whether I'm on this guy's side or not. I definitely understood his perspective on certain things, and then other things it's like, oh wait, am I the bad, like is he the bad guy? It's brilliant. I loved it, and I would recommend it to anyone looking for a read where it's not just handed to you. Like to me, the fun part about this book was having to figure out how you feel about it, and not many books have done that for me, or have given me that feeling or that challenge. So yeah, that's Disgrace. And then the last book I want to talk about, which I read last month, which I absolutely loved, is The Most by Jessica Anthony. This book, so stumbled across it in the bookstore, read the back of the book, and the plot summary on the back of the book is essentially this housewife in like the 50s decides one day to get in her community pool and not get out. That's like all it says. And I was in. It's a little bit misleading because it's a lot more than that, and that's the anchor that the whole story and stories are built around. But really, it's about a settled for marriage, like not a happy marriage, filled with secrets that are uncovered throughout the story. You've got this husband trying to get his wife out of this pool so he can go play golf so she can watch the kids. And it flashes back to different parts of both of their lives and gives perspective on kind of where they're at with the marriage and why. It's a snapshot of a book, and it's very short and quick. And I read that a lot of people didn't like this. It doesn't have the best reviews, which I understand if you go in with the wrong expectations. But it's beautifully written, and again, it's a snapshot of a life that is really tragic. And that's the kind of book I like. You're not at the edge of your seat. You're not wondering what's about to happen. You're experiencing this very mundane, tragic marriage and learning about these very flawed humans. In a sense, we're all very flawed, and that's why books like this are great, because you can, unless you're perfect, you can relate to these characters in a lot of ways. So, yeah, The Most by Jessica Anthony. Those are my favorite books of 2025. I've got a big TBR for next year. I read 59 books this year. I'm sticking with like a 52 book goal A book a week I think is fair. For my TBR for next year, I picked out 5 books that I'm very much looking forward to reading. The first one is The Shining by Stephen King. My wife got me this very cool copy for Christmas, and I'm excited to dive into that. I also have Doctor Sleep, which is the sequel to this that I've heard really good things about. So I think I might read this in January. Very excited about that. Another Christmas gift for my wife, The Fall by Albert Camus. This is the book he wrote right after writing The Plague, which is my favorite book from him that I read a couple years ago. It sounds like it's about a guy confessing to something in a bar in Amsterdam, and he's a lawyer. I don't know. I'm excited about it, though. I obviously love Camus. Up Above the World by Paul Bowles. So this is the author of The Sheltering Sky, which I read last year, 2024, and really loved. One of my favorites. So I saw a bunch of his books on sale on this one website and bought like 3 or 4 of them. And I want to dive into those next year. Up Above the World sounds like it's about a conversation these people are having at a dinner table, like overlooking this town. And that's all the book is, which sounds like it might not be interesting to some people, but those are the kind of books I like. Similar to The Most, kind of just taking a small moment and building a world out of it. So yeah, excited about that one. So this is cool. After I finished The Most by Jessica Anthony, I was about to buy her other book called Enter the Aardvark, and I didn't. I had it in my cart on Pango, a used copy, and then I went to a library sale and they had it, and I got it for $1. Pretty good copy. I don't know what this is about. I've been purposely trying to not read anything about it. I know it's about a congressman or something political, but yeah, I just loved her writing so much in The Most. So I'm hoping I love this just as much. And then the last one, I mentioned it earlier, Streets of Laredo by Larry McMurtry. Diving back into the world of Lonesome Dove. This is another one I want to start like in January, but we'll see. Right now I'm reading A Little Life. I'm about 30% in, and I'm absolutely loving it. This is just the saddest book, and I'm not even halfway through, and I'm terrified of what's going to happen. I love Jude so much, and I'm so invested in this book. It's terrifying. But the reason I bring this up is because usually when I read big books like this, I want to take a break from big books for, a couple weeks and knock out some small novels. But we'll see. I might dive into Streets of Laredo first thing this year. So yeah, that's what I got. Again, I hope if you're watching this, you had a good New Year's and a good holiday. Hopefully you spent some time with your family and got some reading in, drank some good beers. I'll try to be more consistent with videos next year, but we'll see. Again, if I don't, I try to do this just when I feel like doing it, and that's okay. So yeah, Happy New Year, happy reading. Cheers.